Hi, this is Carol Pope.
Hi, I'm Kevin Staples.
And you're listening to Rainbow Country
with Mark Tara.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the persons appearing on the program.
Family life, sex life, creative life. Writer, filmmaker, and publisher Nora Rosenthal crosses the spectrum of flesh and ideas with Canada's newest publication. Today on Rainbow Country, Rat Chat Magazine. That and so much more on episode 285, so stay tuned for Gay Talk Radio right here on Rainbow Country.
Hello, my name is Conchita.
And I'm Barbecue.
And my name is Hardcora. And we are the Beat Girls.
You're listening to
Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Well, hello and welcome to a brand new journey through Rainbow Country. As I like to call it, a little gay radio show working to give voice to the LGBT community and beyond. And as always, I am your tour guide through Rainbow Country. I'm producer and host, Mark Tara. By the way, Rainbow Country originates from CIUT-FM in Toronto and now proudly in syndication on 11 outlets across Canada. So, whether you're listening in the Yukon, British Columbia, the prairies, the east coast of Canada in Newfoundland, Ontario, even down to Buffalo, New York, and online. Well, thanks to you tuning in, streaming, downloading, but ultimately listening. Together, we continue to build Rainbow Country into a nationally syndicated gay radio show, a #1 LGBT podcast on Podomatic.com's Gay and Lesbian chart, as well as being recognized as Canada's #2 LGBT podcast on Feedspot.com. So today, writer, filmmaker, and publisher Nora Rosenthal joins me in conversation to talk about Rat Chat Magazine, Canada's newest publication that crosses the spectrum of flesh and ideas. We'll find out about Canada's newest publication, the story behind the name, Rat Chat, and so much more. Plus an hour two, music from LGBT artists, independent artists, voices that we've come to know and love in classic disco, classic 80s, classic house, and on this episode I'm featuring a 3-song funk set with Rick James, Canada's very own Ashley McIsaac, as well as a 3-song queer new music set. But when I return, writer, filmmaker, and publisher Nora Rosenthal joins me to talk about all things Rat Chat.
Bill 7, to ban discrimination in employment, government services, and housing, based on a person's sexual orientation, was up for a vote at Queen's Park. Most NDP and Liberal MPPs supported the bill, but without some progressive Conservative legislators backing, a divisive split could rack the province. 4 PCs decided to break party ranks to vote with their conscience and support Bill 7. Cabinet Minister and MPP Dennis Timbrell did it to show solidarity for his beloved brother, the well-known drag queen Rusty Ryan. And for me, a gay politician who was not yet out, I had to take a stand. We were known as the Gang of Four. I'm former Cabinet Minister and MPP Phil Gillies. The date, December 2nd, 1986, when LGBT rights came to Ontario.
Hi, I'm Eric Radford. Olympic and world champion figure skater, pianist, and composer, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Terra.
Nora Rosenthal, hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Mark?
I am well, first of all. Thank you for being here, to have your voice, your story be heard by the LGBT community and beyond. So thank you for that, especially to talk about Rat Chat magazine, Canada's newest magazine. First of all, congrats on that.
Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. How do you feel knowing that your current baby, your current magazine baby is now out to the world? How are you feeling?
Good. I feel good about it. It was very fast. I think the idea really started in the spring. So it's a rapid, gathering of people and stories, and it's easy to lose sight in the midst of all that. But I'm so glad about the end result.
And this started in the spring of 2021?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So this is Canada's newest magazine, Rat Chat magazine. Talk to me about this publication and what it's all about.
Definitely. Our tagline is flesh and ideas. And it was really just about the intersection of these two worlds, sort of like a sexy world that can verge on the pornographic, that can be pornographic, if that's not like a bad word, but also an intellectual engagement, not just with sexuality, but also with culture more broadly, and realizing that these are not, antagonistic ideas, that these worlds can and should bleed into one another, inform one another. And for this issue, I really sought out content about sexuality as it relates to family, and maybe structures of family and ways of thinking around that aren't necessarily part of the straight or mainstream thinking around that.
So how often will this magazine be published? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly?
Twice a year.
Okay. And how did you settle on doing twice a year?
Oh, goodness, because I'm also a film producer and I can't do more than that. That's why. It's a pragmatic consideration. And also part of even the idea of doing a print magazine as opposed to something that only lives online is that there's a lot of consideration in the magazine as an object. It's nice, it's kind of heavy and glossy. And just that there's time to craft an object that's beautiful and that you want to own. It comes with a poster inside. Yeah, that it's something special in its physicality that goes even beyond the content.
It's quality.
Mm-hmm.
So, Rat Chat magazine, is this named after a nickname of yours, Rat?
It is. Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, how did you get the nickname Rat?
Oh God, I think the first time I got it was playing Scrabble with my partner, because I gum up the board with all the the stupid little 2-letter words. I think it became it was said in rage the first time, like, you rat, you dirty rat. But I don't know. Now it's just it caught on. Mm-hmm. It's my one and only nickname, and a big part of the impetus of the magazine was reaching out to community after moving cities, after COVID, after sort of losing that tangible touch with people. So it's a bit of a joke with myself that's just chatting with Rat. It's just me missing interviewing people, me missing collaborating with people and making that happen in a different way.
So Rat Chat magazine it's going to be available in Canada, in Europe, in Australia. How did you score a European distributor?
Through cold calling.
I love it.
That's how. Somebody said yes. Said yes, and now it's going to be in the UK, Australia, Belgium, Brazil, Canada, Italy, Spain, Sweden, England, and then New York City and Los Angeles.
You're global.
Yeah, turns out.
And what are your thoughts on that, knowing that your publication will be global? Have you thought about that?
I'm thrilled. It's opened up this whole like bizarre Byzantine world of magazine publishing. You know, like I get emails advising me of freight times because everything is, you know, printed and then packed onto just shipping containers, and, you know, it's 35 days to Australia. So, it's interesting thinking about all these hidden channels of commerce and of culture that we don't necessarily think about.
So in Canada, how will Canadians be able to get their hands on the printed copy of Rat Chat magazine?
There's a couple ways. So there's some in Toronto at a store called 100% Silk. There's some in Nanaimo at a store called Scrap Gold, and also just on my website. If you're somewhere off the beaten path, you can always go to ratchatmag.com or reach out to me, and I'll find a way of getting it to you, because I'm also doing some of this distribution in Canada.
So legacy media, broadcast TV, broadcast radio, print. Why did you want to launch a print magazine now?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I realize it does sound like doomed and foolhardy in so many ways.
Not necessarily, though.
Yeah, I was of many minds about this. In part, I guess I sort of realized from being on the editorial side of a cultural publication in Montreal, doing arts and culture editing, that editing is not so dissimilar to film producing, that there's a lot of similarities in terms of just having all balls in the air and really your fingers in everything and pulling together something that's ultimately very beautiful in the end. And I guess I thought it was worthwhile. I saw that there was a gap, as I saw it, in our way of talking about culture and sexuality, and I just thought, I'm just gonna ask the remarkable artists and people in my life and writers who I know, and see if we can't try and eke out something in that space. And somehow a magazine felt right.
Is there going to be a digital version so people can maybe go onto your website and download a PDF of it?
Yes, I'm working on that right now. I think the plan is really to prioritize print, to prioritize this object, and then there'll be a bit of a staggered release. So in the months following the release of the magazine, articles and photographs will go up online just so it's accessible to everybody.
Mm-hmm. So you're also a filmmaker. How did you get into film?
Oh, I guess through friends working in music.
Mm-hmm. Did you start out doing music videos, directing music videos?
Yeah, I did. It's last year. My husband and I made 3 videos for our good friend Basha Bulat, who's just lovely in every way. And but we'd done some work before that, and we're actually both right now doing our master's in film production at York University. So I'm working a little bit in documentary. I think it's just something I stumbled into. I think if you're interested in storytelling, you're probably interested in all sorts of ways of telling stories. So I'm a writer, but then I was having moments of wanting to prioritize image over text, and then one thing led to another, and now I work in film.
And how do you feel adding publisher to your portfolio?
Good, but terrified.
Are you wearing that hat well?
I hope so.
I'm sure your readers think you are.
As long as they think it, that's fine.
So you mentioned before you used to live in Montreal. You were the arts and culture editor at Cult MTL magazine in Montreal. Why did you leave Montreal to come to Toronto?
Oh, I mean, my husband and I started dating another couple during the early days of COVID. So everyone else's experience of isolation was sort of antithetical to our experience of like falling in love, and also like we'd been in like a monogamous relationship before. It was something very new for us, but something that just felt right. And we moved cities to be with our partners and to co-parent kids together.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you used to live in Montreal. You were the arts and culture editor at Cult MTL magazine. You moved to Toronto. Did you miss having a platform to be able to interview people, to talk to other artists, to talk about arts and culture? And maybe that was part of the impetus of creating Rat Chat magazine?
Oh, absolutely. No, it was love. I loved the whole experience of working at Cult. Of you realize you're going to interview somebody, you read everything about them. I remember interviewing Laurie Anderson and reading all the other interviews that that I could get my hands on, just to try and build this arc of questions around her and her.
What was it like interviewing Superman, Laurie Anderson?
Very weird. That was the first time where I was sort of talking to somebody who I idolized a little bit, or where there was sort of a different power dynamic. But it was, I don't know, she was lovely, and she gave such unexpected answers. She was a challenging person to speak to. But it's funny. My former editor at Cult worked on the masthead for Rat Chat, Dave Jaffer, and it just goes to show how you can tumble into things, because I became the editor at Cult because I ran into the previous arts editor, or who was then the current arts editor, at a Christmas party, and he didn't want the job anymore, and I told him he should give it to me. And now we're pals, and now he helped me to edit Rat Chat.
Wow. Okay, so Eileen and Wendy, talk to me about your inaugural issue of Rat Chat magazine, and who's on the front cover. This couple. Talk to me about this couple, Eileen and Wendy, and the story behind them, and why you chose to feature them.
They're the most delightful women imaginable. Like my interview with them cannot do justice to how lovely they are to speak to. But I've been put in touch with Eileen's daughter, this photographer and writer, Ariana Molly, who does these she was working on this ongoing series, these very beautiful, very glamorous, and very stylized portraits of sex workers, which felt very, very fitting with the magazine. So I actually initially reached out to talk to her about that. And then she said, "Oh, you know what? I have this perfect story for you. My mom, who's always been straight, fell in love with a woman during COVID, and now they have this beautiful love story, and they live together." So that, of course, it couldn't be a more perfect story. And because Ariana has this amazing rapport with her mom, Eileen, and with Eileen's partner, Wendy, these women they're models, but they seem like it under, Ariana's lens. There's this wonderful playfulness. And even in the end of the day, speaking to them, I think Eileen has this wonderful line that she doesn't want to identify as anything. Like, why bother with these labels? Why bother with identifying? She says, I'm just gay for Wendy, which I thought was such a wonderful and succinct and kind of perfect way of saying that.
Were they hesitant at all to be featured in Rat Chat magazine?
No, they were. No, I think they love being photographed, and I think Ariana has photographed them for some other projects of hers, and just like having them model clothes. And it was important too to me that it not just be some like 19-year-old on the cover, that it be that it be somebody maybe a little bit older, and they're so beautiful, and they come from very different backgrounds. Like Eileen's Jewish, Wendy comes from a Caribbean Canadian background. And then there they are, just looking like incredibly suave and incredibly confident, and that's exactly what I wanted on my cover.
Yeah, it's a compelling photo.
I'm glad you think so.
Okay, a random question.
Yes.
Okay, so what does the Pope, the Queen of England, and yourself all have in common?
Oh, goodness. Oh, sorry, I do know the answer to this. We're all photographed by Christopher Wall.
Correct. Ding, ding, ding. You get nothing.
Damn.
No budget on this show, girl.
That's okay. I feel you. It's so funny. So Christopher, he took my favorite photograph anyone's ever taken of my mom 10 years ago for Canadian Art Magazine. It just totally captures who my mom is. And then I had this job at an architecture firm very briefly last fall, and I cold called Christopher. I said, Christopher, you took the best photo anyone's ever taken of my mom. Will you come into the studio and take photos of these architects? And yeah, we just hit it off. So when I asked him if he wanted to work on this project with me and to collaborate on Rat Chat, and I said, who do you want to photograph for the magazine? Like, what's your contribution going to be? And he said, I want my contribution to be you and your family. Mm-hmm. So that's what it is.
It's a compelling photo of yourself and your 3 other partners and your kids. How do you feel about that being featured in the inaugural issue of your own magazine?
It's good. It's good, and it's weird. I mean, I love the photograph. I love how Zoe, who's 2, is just this blur. I have always loved in early photography, like in the late 1800s, how everyone looks like, people look like a different species. They look, it's so easy to forget that how stern they look is really just a product of exposure times. And the only time you can really feel that lineage and that humanity is when you see a kid who's just a total blur, because of the exposure time, that we see that life and that heritage. So I love that aspect of it in particular. And yeah, it's funny. I had lots of mixed feelings about whether or not
putting yourself in the magazine. Yeah,
exactly. In the end, I opted, for instance, I've written lots about this experience, and I consider myself in many ways to be a writer first, like a writer before anything else. But that felt really like imposing my voice on a story shared by lots of different people. And as much as I'll probably write about this experience for another publication for this context and this photo series, for so much about all of us, it seemed much more appropriate to just let it be Christopher's voice, to just let it be this outside photographer who we're all kind of getting to know as a friend, coming in and, showing us how he sees us in a way. And yeah, I had misgivings too about whether it's too much, because when your hands are so much in a project already, to put your own image in it. But then at the end of the day, my family was also the whole reason for thinking about family and sexuality in a different way than I had previously, and was also just a huge part of the inspiration for even starting the project in the first place. So that was how I rationalized it at the end of the day.
Also, too, I think that for your readers, it's getting to know who's behind this magazine as well by putting yourself in there and sharing your story.
I hope so. And I think, it's funny, even when I was talking to Eileen and Wendy, and they were kind of curious, and we were sort of asking each other just curious, gossipy questions to one another. And they said, well, do you know anybody else who has like lives with all their partners and their kids? I was like, no, I have no idea. I don't know anybody else in a similar circumstance. Which is like it's neither here nor there. But I do think when we're having so many discussions about it being important to see, I don't think it's necessarily you need to see somebody exactly like you, but it's so important to see just a multiplicity of ways of being. And then, it was very important, for instance, that this magazine be kind of agnostic in that regard, that I'm not saying that any one way of like being and loving is the right way, but just sort of showing a little smattering of how other people are doing it.
Yeah. So you're featured in your magazine, and you're photographed by acclaimed Canadian photographer Christopher Wall, and he's photographed like all these famous people. It's crazy. You were saying like you met him like a year ago or something?
Yeah, we get along. I don't know.
Were you nervous about reaching out to him?
The first time, no, just because I loved this photo of my mom, like I was saying so much. I thought, my mom's like, oh, she's a funny person. She's this like.
So when he did that photo with your mom, were you around?
No, I left home. But my mom is this like delightful spectrumy intellectual, and he captured all of that in a photograph. And I thought, you must be great. And then of course, it's nerve-wracking having somebody come into your house and show some aspect of your intimate life for others to see. I think too, because in every photograph there's always something absent from a photo. There's always so much that we've selected. Even which frame you've selected. So it's really like a relinquishing of control to somebody else's creative vision. But we also, like, even when Christopher came over to the house, and he came over twice, and there was a lot of dialogue about, how we wanted to be presented, but then he's also coming forward with his vision. And then I guess just as the various parties kind of struggle and, I think probably succeed in this case of finding some sort of interesting representational middle ground. I think it's always interesting to see where authorship lives in a photograph, how it's sort of part subject and part photographer, and they meet somewhere in the middle.
And in Rat Chat magazine, are you interviewing your subjects?
For this one, yes. So I interviewed Eileen and Wendy, and then I also interviewed an old friend of mine, this filmmaker, Issa Ben, who's just, she's so lovely, and she's coming at everything from just a totally unique worldview. She's Black, she's Jewish, she's like not a neurotypical person. She's just great. She's just super interesting. She's seen every movie. She's read everything. She's such a pleasure to talk to.
Mm-hmm. And going forward with the magazine, who do you hope to get as guests in upcoming issues?
Oh goodness! For next issue, I'm really hoping to get Bruce the Bruce. I think that would be a perfect fit. But I want to be surprised. Like, I think when you're creating a project for the first time, especially something that you intend to have a fair bit of longevity, it's automatically just really your social circle and your community, maybe a few steps beyond. But it can't extend so far in the first iteration. But my hope is that as things go on, that I'll just be surprised that somebody will have heard of the magazine and say like, hey, I want to write for you, or I have this perfect story for you, or I have this story that maybe seems totally out of left field, but I want to propose it anyways, because I want it to be a place where you can just talk about anything.
Mm-hmm. And in Rat Chat magazine, how many pages are in a typical issue?
This one is close to 100. It's long.
Wow. And is it a hardcover?
No. It's glossy, perfect bound, but soft.
And on that note, we will return after this Rainbow Country update.
Hi, everyone. This is Mark Tewksbury, Olympic champion, leader, humanitarian. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
So I thought I would take this time to let you know what's coming up over the next few weeks right here on Rainbow Country. On the next episode, 4-time Juno Award-winning recording artist Billy Newton-Davis kicks off Black History Month. Reverie TV, the world's first LGBTQ streaming platform. I'll be joined by CEO and co-founder Damian Pelliccioni, who's also Hollywood's first gender non-binary CEO, and American electronic queer artist Nikki Buell. All that and more coming up over the next few weeks right here on Rainbow Country. But before we get back to my one-on-one with Nora Rosenthal, I'd like to ask for your help. Here's what I mean. If you enjoy what I'm doing here on Rainbow Country, if you see the importance of having a platform like Rainbow Country giving voice to the LGBT community and beyond, here's the ask, and it's pretty simple and free. I would be honored if you would join me to get the word out about Rainbow Country. How? Well, tell your friends, tell your family. If you see a post of mine about the show on socials, like, retweet. Let's take this platform as far as we can take it in 2022. So, join me, won't you?
Hi, I'm Justin Ling, author of Missing from the Village. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Here's another random question. As an interviewer for yourself, how do you see yourself as an interviewer? Do you see yourself as someone that gets in and does all this research, or do you just go by, you do a little bit of research and you just kind of go, flow of a stream of consciousness sort of thing? As an interviewer, how would you categorize yourself?
Oh, goodness. I think it really depends on who I'm talking to. I've had moments where I was interviewing people where I was socially close to them, but where we'd never actually had a real conversation about their art or their profession. And I found that fascinating to ask all these questions that you normally don't get to ask. And that was more of like a personal interrogation of like, sometimes if it's a painter, sometimes I'll just like sit and like be with their paintings and think about what I need to ask them about that. So they could look like that for one person. For Laurie Anderson, it's a bit different. Like here's somebody she's been interviewed countless times, and she also seemingly has had all these different kinds of careers. So I wanted to, in some ways, get past how I knew her as a musician, and it was very interesting. I got to find out about this like amazing art installation she'd done in collaboration with a detainee at Guantanamo. So it was really discovering what her art practice looks like now. So it's often a combination of things. I enjoy the experience of interviewing people whose practice is not at all like mine, because even as somebody reading interviews, I always enjoy that. Like I always enjoy when like those rare occasions where it's like the filmmaker interviewing hip hop musician, and it's just they're going to ask totally bizarre questions that would never just be asked in the usual like, media circuit. And that as a reader, that really interests me. So I like facilitating, even, you know, as an editor, that's a goal too, is facilitating conversations between interviewees and interviewers who wouldn't normally necessarily speak to one another.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever had some really like tough interviews or interviews that you care to forget? Because just between you and me, I've had a couple of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Sometimes I feel like you can have an interview that feels like it's going really well socially, and it doesn't make a great interview after the fact. Like when I've done predominantly written interviews, then you transcribe it and you think, oh, we got along too well. It's dull now. It's dull in print. Whereas actually, it's funny. With Laurie Anderson, I found her very difficult to speak to. Like there were questions that I thought would prompt a lot that were just shut down. They got one word answers, and then there were angles.
That's hard.
Yeah. And then there were like I distinctly remember asking her. I was like, "Oh, you were a female artist who had all these like very, very famous male peers." And sort of what was it like being in that world, like for better or for worse, just like how did that influence your way of thinking? Does it at all? And I think she seemed to find it just like I don't know, like it's not the right question. And in fact, she told me that women almost like she seemed to think that women have it like that worse now, that there was almost like that cognizance of difference felt problematic to her. But anyhow, it went in. It felt very, very challenging at the time and in the moment, and it felt like I was really like having to come up with questions on the fly. But then when I looked at my transcription after the fact, I thought, you know what, this is fine. This is interesting. It was terrifying at the time, but it ended up somewhere good, which I guess is all that really matters. That's something, I say not all that matters, but it's certainly something that, I think I strive for.
You obviously enjoy interviewing people.
Yeah.
Getting them to say more than one word.
Yeah. It's funny, even before Rat Chat, because during COVID, I started cold water swimming in Lake Ontario. And that started intriguing me. So I started just on the side, I started an interview project of just reaching out to people globally and about who people who cold water swim, and just asking them about their thoughts on it, their experiences about it. And then for sort of at the end of each conversation, I would ask somebody to recommend like maybe two people to talk to, and then you branch out from person to person in unexpected ways.
So family is an underlying theme of the first issue of Rat Chat magazine. You have a unique family. You're in a polyamorous relationship. First of all, polyamorous, in a relationship essentially with other people, correct?
Yeah.
So talk to me about how you ended up in, I guess, essentially moving from Montreal to Toronto with your husband to be with another couple. Talk to me about who this other couple is and how you guys met. First of all, let's start there. How did you and your husband meet this other couple?
Oh, goodness. So I guess, first of all, we live in Hamilton, I should say. I'm from Toronto, but we live adjacent to Toronto.
Mm-hmm. Toronto adjacent.
Yeah, close enough. It's so funny. I had managed this restaurant in Montreal for years. I'd worked there probably for 7 years. And they came and ate every weekend for years and years, probably 5 years. And then, one day we were chatting, and it was proposed that we'd go out for dinner and like with their friends. And I thought, oh my God, I joked with my friends, like, my God, I've been friend asked out. That's incredible. I was like, you never get friend asked out. It's so hard to make new friends. as an adult. And here, my very, very favorite clients have asked us to come over and like have dinner with their friends. That's wonderful. And then it was just like regular dating. We just started hanging out and started watching movies together and started like staying over really late. And then eventually we stayed over.
Were you attracted to them?
Yeah. But it happened gradually. Like I was in it felt so out of left field to my, experience as like a fairly straight person. I think I just like my imagination was like crippled in this regard, like, I at some point, I think we were taking a cab home and I said like, I think we're dating. I think somehow, I don't know, I think this is great. And like, and there were all these moments prior to where I didn't even know what was happening. It's like, what's going on here? Like this feels totally outside my frame of reference, totally outside of anything I've ever like seen or talked about or even wanted. But then it became the thing I wanted.
Earlier, you mentioned that you and your husband were in a monogamous relationship, correct?
Yeah.
So you're in a monogamous relationship. You get friend-assed out with another couple. Was your husband open to exploring open relationships?
We'd never even really talked about it. We talked about the idea of like, it being fun to maybe like hook up with somebody else, but nothing in the sort of like in the realm of something so serious and so emotionally invested. But it's bizarre to say, but we have found like our other people. These people are we're so alike in these critical ways. There are such bizarre, it feels almost fated in some regards. The ways in which we get along. Yeah, and I mean, and it's rendered even like maybe more interesting by the fact that they have 2 kids who are now like kids that we're also raising. I really do think that like if you're living in a straight relationship, your imagination is just limited to other straight relationships. But then if you're really lucky and you encounter something beyond that, like you can realize all the ways in which you've like limited yourself internally in your way of thinking. But also I think it's like, it's like a unicorn scenario too. We're just so unbelievably lucky in the ways in which we get along. And just like in terms of like, because obviously it's one thing to have a strong sexual attraction to somebody, and it's another to like raise kids together, and it's another to like do laundry and make meals and just live that like quotidian existence and have that work.
Do you all live together?
Yeah, we do.
You all live together in the same house?
Yep.
Okay. And so I have to go here, so I hope you can respect me going where I'm about to go. But who's hooking up with who? So there's you and your husband and the other couple. Are the 2 women hooking up? Are the 2 men hooking up?
It's mostly like hetero hooking up. I will say that.
So you're hooking up with the other husband and he's hooking up with the other wife.
Yeah. Though I think there's like, there's other levels of intimacy, but yeah, I'd say like that's sort of how the partnership happened. Yeah.
Ain't nothing wrong with that, girl. And so how do you see this playing out? Are you just basically in this and taking it as it goes, or are you all sitting around thinking about, the long-term aspects of this relationship that you guys all have together?
No, it's total long-term thinking. And that happened. Wow. That happened so fast. Mm-hmm. But I think you kind of,
because you guys moved from Montreal to Hamilton.
Yeah, but for lots of different reasons. I mean, even my God, like my husband and I think we never dated before he moved in. That's just how I go about things, or how we all go about things. But I mean, especially with kids involved is very like having upheaval is very tough. And I think we just all, there was just at some point an unspoken and then spoken level of commitment. And we definitely talk about things in the long term. Though I think it's funny to kind of like go back in time and see the initial ways in which you commit yourself in small ways, especially when it comes to raising the kids. Like you sort of like test boundaries and wondering like, what there's definitely when you're not like a biological parent, you wonder what your role is and what's taking on too much and what's not taking on enough. And that, evolves organically in some ways, and then other things you just have to talk about. But we're definitely, we talk about like finances and how we're like, where we're all going to be in 5 years. And this is just, I don't know, it just happened.
What do they think about Rat Chat magazine?
I'm sure, because it dominated my life and therefore, bled into the household in lots of ways.
Mm-hmm. Do you personally ever feel jealous at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think jealousy exists in all relationships. I think jealousy probably even exists if you're like not in a relationship with somebody. I mean, I think it's just funny because people ask that a lot. People really like hone in on that, and I just say like, sure, if we were all like the kinds of people who are just burning with jealousy, I don't think we'd be in this position, because that just sounds like a horrible kind of like toxic situation to be in if we were just like in turmoil at all times. I think you experience that and you kind of just have to, you let it, I think I try and let it wash over me. And there's some things you talk about, and some things are just like, they're fleeting. It's like you can, the same way if you're with somebody and you're walking in the street, you can point out somebody and say, "Ooh, like look at that person, they look great. You'll like them. Like why don't you like go and turn around, look at that person." But there's also the flip side of that. Like on a different day, you could feel like weird about seeing somebody's gaze wander. But of course, we all do these things. We all experience like, we all experience other people who we're not in relationships with as being attractive. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think just maybe like checking in with yourself and recognizing if there's a pattern to things, or if there's something that's happening that makes you feel a certain way, or if it's just like that ebb and flow of, feeling good and bad about basically the same thing.
So, Toronto, New York City, Los Angeles, the UK, Australia, Belgium, Brazil, Italy, Spain, Sweden. When your audiences in these various areas of the world, when they read your magazine, is there a message that you would like your audiences to come away with after reading Rat Chat magazine?
It's funny. I mean, I try to make it as, I often find, even as a critic, that art with a message is almost always really bad. If you sought out with this, like, if you sought out a lesson to glean, there's just going to be something quite like intrinsically simplistic about that message. But I think maybe like a general spirit of like openness to other ways of living that aren't your own, of which there are like, infinite possibilities, that's a really nice takeaway, to just like, to be kind to people, to be also, to be titillated, to find like, I mean, it was also always my intent to make like a sexy magazine, in part as a reaction to culture that I think has conflated that which is sexy with that which is, misogynistic and patriarchal and often racist. And then of course there's lots which is all those things. But that there's a way of encouraging sexual culture that in a way that is respectful, but also exciting, that it doesn't have to be stodgy in order to be respectful. I think that's also something, a way of thinking around sex and sexuality that I want to encourage.
Well said. Well said. Nora Rosenthal, thank you so much for your time. Well said, well done, well written, well created. Rat Chat Magazine, hey, hey, hey. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
For more on writer, filmmaker, and publisher Nora Rosenthal, check out her website, norarosenthal.com. And for even more on Canada's newest publication, check out the website, ratchatmag.com.
Hi, I'm Keegan Hurst, former professional rugby player, coach, raving homosexual, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
And just like that, this little gay journey through Rainbow Country has come to an end. For the full 2-hour episode, just head over to marktara.com, where everything is connected, and hit the archives banner. To keep up to date with the show, follow me on socials at Mark Tara. The podcast is available on all major platforms, including iHeart Podcasts. And finally, I want to take this time to thank you for taking your time to be with me. Remember, stay well and stay safe.
Hi, this is Police Constable Danielle Botno, also known as LGBT Cop, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.